So that is how I got into this, like finally got into the data engineering a tech stack in my career. That is how why I joined specifically, TrendyTech. I saw a lot many reviews. Trust me, when I say this, I have followed Sumit since I think 2020 or 2021, right?
Hi everyone, this is Mansa Nagraj from TrendyTech. Having cracked interviews of multiple eminent firms and holding 8 offers from top-notch companies, let's get to know how Swapnil, an accomplished data engineer, was able to achieve this. Watch until the end to know his top strategies and preparation plans to become an in-demand niche data engineer. Hi Swapnil, I'm really pleased to be in conversation with you to know your journey of success. I'm looking forward to getting to know some top secrets for our audience from your experiences and learning. So should we get started with your brief introduction?
So yeah, hi, this is Swapnil. Basically, I enrolled in TrendyTech last year only, that is 2022, and Feb of 2022. And I have in total I have 5.4 years of working experience. So although Infosys happens to be my first company, but that was just for training part. But right after that, I joined IBM, and from there onwards, I started working on different technologies. So in total, I think I have worked on 3 different tech stacks. So the first one happens to be enterprise application integration, wherein I got introduced to different systems and their message formats. So yeah, I'm coming to the data engineering part because this is how everything started. This is how I developed my interest over time and got into the data part of it. So basically what we were doing was integrating different types of systems. So let's say if I have a mainframe machine, so they usually send COBOL copybooks, right? And there might be systems that have APIs. So basically integrating them so that there could be a common message format or message interchange format. Then after that, for a short while, I worked in the blockchain platform, IBM's own blockchain platform, that is Hyperledger Fabric. So I worked on that. Right after that, after changing 2 different tech stacks, I actually started with the data engineering. So first and foremost was basically learning about the distributed systems, right? So that is how I got into this particular thing. So they asked me, I still remember these guys. I used to work with. They are from IBM Rocket Center. They used to work in IBM Rocket Center. That happens to be the biggest IBM research facility in IBM US. So these guys asked me to simply go through Kafka. That's it. So, and understand the concepts and what all things and how exactly does the consensus algorithm works, and how exactly at that time it was using Zookeeper, I remember. Right now they don't need it, but they asked me to go through all those things. So I read the entire documentation of Kafka, and that is how I developed my interest for big data also. So gradually they started they wanted me to learn and go for Spark. Now you must be thinking, why exactly did these guys ask me to go for these technologies? So basically they were working on a product. So the product was IBM Storage Insights. So Storage Insights is basically a product that can be used for probe and performance, that can be used for collecting the probe and performance data of different storage devices that are sold either by IBM, HP Enterprises, Hitachi Vantara, Dell EMC, or Pure Storage System, and there is one more good competitor, NetApp. So these guys have their own softwares also. NetApp has ActiveIQ, and then we have Pure Storage. These guys have some other software. So IBM already had software, that is Storage Insights, on cloud itself, but they wanted to collect these data, the data from these devices. So earlier there were some old legacy systems and software that were collecting the data, so it was quite slow. So then they tried to move to the big data tech stack. So that is how I got into this, finally got into the data engineering a tech stack in my career. And since I wanted to basically enhance my learning, so and that is why I joined specifically TrendyTech. I saw a lot many reviews. Trust me, when I say this, I have been following Sumit since, I have followed Sumit since I think 2020 or 2021, right? I have been following him, each and every post by all his students, and then only after after thinking a lot, I joined this course because of the curated content that was being offered, because I wanted to enhance my knowledge itself. So yeah, that's about me and how I got into data engineering. I think I covered an additional question as well. So
Yeah, right. Pretty much you have covered all the concepts or all the topics that I was wanting to ask you. But yeah, any which ways, so let's talk about, so you typically started your career like any other software engineer with Infosys, right? Like a typical start. Did you kind of envision or foresee working as a data engineer back then?
To be very honest, I didn't even know that something called as data engineering exists in the market. I mean, as a fresher, when you join a particular company, you are simply put, I mean, if it is a service company, let's say, right, Infosys or maybe TCS, Wipro, Accenture, they are consulting firms, right? So they will hire as per their requirements. That is the first thing, right? So if they are hiring you as maybe an associate or maybe graduate hire or maybe associate system engineer or a system engineer trainee, so you'll be put into any technology. It could be .NET, it could be Java, it could be business intelligence, it could be maybe data engineering or big data. So at that point of time, I didn't knew. I had no idea about data engineering. But I knew what exactly is MapReduce and big data, because it was the hype, like it was the hype in the market. It had a huge hype. Like I remember back in 2016 or 15, when all of our seniors, like in fourth year or third year, who were in third or fourth year, they were building, or maybe they were trying to create applications by using MapReduce itself. So, if you remember that particular phase of big data when it was not that popular, I think in India, and it was not that mainstream. Right now, each and every student, maybe student is what we call them, right? From college onwards, they are into cloud, they are into big data. You ask them about Spark, they know it. You ask them about Kafka, they know it. No, they don't know about the internals of Spark or Kafka or HDFS or every other file system out there, or why exactly a cloud is needed, but they know how the things work, and many of them are certified also. So my point is, at that point of time, we were not, on the internet, and we as students, we were not exactly sure about what exactly is that. But as I progressed in my career and started dealing with different systems, their message formats and the data, that is how I basically got into this particular thing. And trust me, I loved it. It was matching my expectations. Like, it had coding, it had data, we had to deal with the systems. That is the raw computing power of machines, right? So that is I love the most when it comes to dealing with big data. Like what exactly, like how much or how humongous or what enormous power do these machines need in order to crunch crunch huge numbers, or maybe an entire chunk of data. It could be in TVs or maybe petabyte level data. So that developed my interest. Yeah, so basically from the starting, if you ask, I had no idea what exactly is data engineering or big data, but now I do know about it. So yeah.
Well, during your initial days, you were pretty much like aware of it, but not totally having complete in-depth knowledge about it. And then you slowly got introduced to it in IBM, where you pretty much worked on several projects. But even though you were working on good projects in IBM on big data tech stack, you have also mentioned that you wanted to upskill yourself more and learn more about big data tech stack. So did you have any kind of knowledge gap that you felt that has to be covered? And what are the resources that you did mention that Sumit sir's Big Data Masters program helped you a lot as well? So can you please elaborate a little bit on the resources that you referred to in order to gain that expertise in the big data field?
So it's going to be a little long, this particular answer, because when I started with this, so the company directly asked me, can you go through this, right? Now, if you are asking someone who is from who has worked on maybe who was working on some other tech stack, all of a sudden, if you ask them, hey, can you go through this particular? There's a new kid in the block, right? There's a new tool. Can you go through that? So your first and foremost step would be, you won't go through the documentation, trust me. Although that is the best thing that you can do, and it should be your first step, that you go through the documentation. But not everyone can understand the documentation. They need a simple language, right? They need it in simpler. They need a simple explanation of the things, right? So basically, the first step for me was to go through a couple of small Udemy courses, like a short courses, maybe of it could range from 4 hours to 5 hours, or maybe 8 hours. There are extremely good Kafka and AWS courses out there on Udemy if you simply go and search for it, right? And apart from that, YouTube is one free source. Back in 2012-13, when internet when we did not had this much data, like the unlimited data that we got maybe after 2016 or 17, that we started getting. So we did not had that luxury, right? But now that we have that luxury of unlimited data, so you can definitely go ahead and maybe start exploring things on YouTube, right? That is, apart from that, this YouTube. And then if you feel that I like not just the data part of data engineering, but the engineering part also. See, data, you can deal with data if you are into data analytics or maybe data science, right? But it's common across the board. But the thing is, if you want to deal with the engineering part of it, then you have to go for the internals, right? And that is when I suggest you go through YouTube, right? It's a couple of videos on YouTube. You check if you really love the data plus engineering, both the parts of it. Only then you spend your money on some Udemy courses, right? That would be the second step. And if you like that, then you can go ahead and read the documentation, or start reading the documentations. The moment you are done with the documentations, although that content is not curated, right? You have to look for different resources, go through different documentations, or maybe go through different cheat sheets. So cheat sheets are also available. There's one good free cheat sheet available, I think, if you want to go for cloud and maybe AWS big data analytics tech stack, right? So I think from Digital Cloud Training, these are the guys, I think they offer free cheat sheets. So you can go through that. And when you are done with these things, now that you need a curated content, right? So that is when you should go for a master's program. That is when you should spend your money, right? So basically, the first step would be go through the free resources available on YouTube. Then you go through or pay some sort of money, maybe 400 or 500 rupees, buy a course from Udemy, go through it. If you like that, then start going through the documentation, read about the internals of that particular framework, or maybe if it comes under Apache Commons license, then you go through the entire documentation, read about the algorithms that it has, read about the development that these guys are doing, or maybe the issues that they post on GitHub, right? Each and every free tool out there which comes under Apache Commons license, these guys basically have their own GitHub. They maintain their own GitHub, and there they have issues. You can actually write an issue. You can tell them that, yeah, this is the issue that we are facing. So they will respond, okay, this is what you can do in order to resolve the issue. So that should be the third step. Then after that, you can go for a master's program, so that you can get curated content. And if you want to prepare for the interviews, right, specifically for interviews, specifically for cracking other companies or the different interviews, so that is when you should go for a master's program. Because these master's program, even this TrendyTech's big data course, these are exhausting, right? These are aggressive, a little bit aggressive as in you need some time, you need to be in it, you have to like data engineering in order to do these things. You cannot simply go ahead with a course and then start liking data engineering. You should love the data and the engineering aspect of it. Only then you can get into data engineering. So that is why what I usually tell most of the guys who want to get into data engineering. I get so many messages on LinkedIn regarding this. So this is what you need to do. You should first, you should need to check if you really love data plus engineering. Then you have to get into it.
Right, I agree on that. So first, initially you will have to explore yourself, wherein you have that inclination towards data or not. that's where even the prerequisites are set, where you need to understand SQL. You should be really interested in programming as well, and also after that there should be some guided path wherein it can lead you to that particular expertise that you would be needing and which is relevant. I agree that there are a lot of resources available on the net where you can refer to, but it becomes a little bit tiring for an individual to be able to explore all of it and then put it together and join that dots. I mean, when a master's program or like a curated course, it would really lead you and it would help you in minimizing the amount of time that you would waste on in order to explore the others as well. But I totally agree on that you need to check if you have that inclination or interest towards data engineering especially, right? Thanks for that, Swapnil. And the next question that I was wanting to ask you was around since you have held 8 offers from top-notch companies, definitely I wouldn't want you to let go of this question, because all of our audience are pretty much curious and interested in knowing about the interview process as such. So could you help us out with the interview process and the interview rounds for the role of a data engineer?
Okay, I mean, I would love to answer this question, since I think this is one of the most demanded questions, right, when it comes to maybe switching a company, or maybe if you are equipped with data engineering or the big data knowledge, but now you want to switch or maybe change your tech stack in a different company, right? So basically, see, I have appeared for so many interviews, right? I mean, in my entire 3 months of notice period itself, I think I appeared for more than 70 to 80 interviews. I landed in them, and the first step would be, see, you need to prepare your CV accordingly, right? You need to add the keywords. Whatever you have learned so far, you should have keywords of that. If I have, let's say, if I have worked on maybe Amazon S3, Amazon Redshift, and Athena, or maybe Glue, right? Or maybe Amazon Managed Streaming for Kafka, MSK, or managed Amazon's own version of Apache Airflow. So I have to mention that. Now that is the first step. We can talk about that later. Let's keep it aside. Then if at all you landed in an interview, so see, there are 3 types of companies: service companies, captive firms, and product firms, right? So their difficulties raise as you move from service to captive to product, right? So basically but there is a point. I mean, captive, since these are the mid ones, so they can actually, their interviews might be so easy that you will basically, you can compare it with the one with the service-based company, or there might be a case, let's say if Goldman Sachs is there, right? Or maybe McKinsey's own data arm, that is Quantum Black. So these guys, their interviews are a little bit tough, that you can actually compare with them with the likes of maybe, let's say, maybe it's a consulting firm although, but maybe BCG, or maybe Bain and Company, right? And other than that, I don't remember the names exactly, I can't recall them, but maybe JP Morgan Chase, although it's a captive firm, but their interview process, I think they still ask you to undergo 4 or 5 rounds, right? So basically that can happen. So these are the 3 types, right? So if you are going for a service company, so you need to simply understand what exactly they are working on, right? So you basically, what exactly is the tech stack? You simply need to go through the surface level understanding of that. They won't go really in depth, right? They won't go too much in depth, because they barely have 2 interview rounds: first technical, second HR, and they are done with it. Most of them. There are companies that take 2 tech rounds and then 3rd HR round, right? But it's not the case with everyone. So basically, this is a little bit easier to crack. All you need is the basic Spark knowledge and the basic knowledge about the tools that they are asking. So when it comes to Spark, you need to go through the optimization techniques, because this is the most asked question, like the very famous one. Then you need to go through, maybe if they can ask maybe what exactly is data skewing, what do you understand by data skewing, right? So that is the second thing. Let's say then if they need Docker, if they want want you to understand maybe the concepts of Docker and how exactly does it work. You need the surface level knowledge of that. You don't have to go in depth into Docker and how can you deploy it alongside Kubernetes or maybe K8s. You don't need that kind of knowledge, right? They'll simply go through the questions that are on the surface. There might be cases where they'll ask you to share your screen and maybe write a code a very simple one, maybe a factorial or maybe a Fibonacci, or maybe it could be sort the array, or maybe find some or the other element from an array. These are the questions that they can ask, right? Then but there are service companies like ThoughtWorks. Their interview processes are quite rigorous, right? I think they have 5 rounds of interviews, 2 tech based, that are I think 2 coding rounds or something, and then they have 2 core technical rounds wherein they will ask you about your skills and then basically the questions that are related directly to your skills, right? So this was for ThoughtWorks. Then if we move on to Captive, so basically I work at CBA, right? CBA is a captive firm. Captive as in their core business is banking, but they need IT to support their core business, right? Suppose MRF's core business is to make tires, but they need IT to support their business. So that is captive firm, right? So basically captive firms, since captive firms actually they are the mid-tier ones, so basically their interviews might be easy, or it may so happen that their interviews are a little bit tough. So as I mentioned, if you let's say go for maybe Goldman Sachs, right? So their interviews could be tough. There are people who are from top-notch engineering institutes, so they will ask you questions according to their standards, right? So although standardization, although discrimination I don't want to do, but the thing is you have to have, or maybe you need to reach the peak, right? You have to have, or maybe you need to match their level of knowledge. Only then they will start considering you, right? So basically, if I mentioned about quantum black, so they will ask questions accordingly. They'll ask you to go through complex SQL. They will simply not ask you to maybe find a name, or maybe just simply fire a select query and with a where condition and maybe with a group by. They will ask you to write maybe a query for finding a 7-day moving average, right? That is one thing they can ask. They will ask you what exactly is the difference between row num and rank and dense rank. Not just the difference, not just the what part of it, but the how part of it as well. What I can read about that in simply a book. What exactly is dense rank, what exactly is rank, how exactly does row num function, with a simple one query example. But they won't ask you that. They will simply give a question and they will ask you, I just want to see your approach. What exactly is the approach that you are following, right? If you can do it without, maybe there might be time, without row num or without a specific function. If you can go for it in a simple approach, then you go for it. And if you can simply make the query a little bit complex, but at the same time optimize the performance, then you go for it. So these are the captive firms, right? They can ask you for that, and they will simply ask you about what exactly have you been working on, and the data pipeline that you have worked on, or maybe the types of transformations, or maybe what exactly were you transforming, the kind of data you were transforming in a particular pipeline, and where exactly you were using Spark, what exactly was your underlying file system that you were using, and what was the cloud environment that you are using in your current company. So these are the types of questions that they can ask, but it can range, or it can, since these guys are the mid-tier ones again, so their questions can maybe overlap with the ones with product firms as well, right? So when I talk about product firms, so I had appeared for, I'll tell you one instance. So GoDaddy was interviewing me, right? So they had 5 rounds, but trust me, it was the best interview process so far that I've seen. They actually mentioned what are the topics that we will be covering in each and every round. Specifically, like we'll be covering Scala, we'll be covering Python, and we'll be covering Spark. Then in second round, we'll be covering Spark, then a little bit of cloud concepts, then data modeling. So this is how they had mentioned it. So basically their interview process revolves more around how of the things and not what of the things, right? They can simply ask you what and you can give a bookish definition of that, but they kept on asking me how. And when if they simply want to play basically just maybe what we call it India's Got Talent with you, so they will end if they don't like it, they'll end the interview maybe within 10 or 20 minutes, maybe barely 10 or 20 minutes. But if they really want to grill you, if they really want to grill you in the interview process, they will straight away go for 1 hour, and they will keep on helping you in between as well, right? So they asked me on a hacker rank board, they asked me to draw the entire architecture of my current assignment. So although you don't have to go for the confidential details of the company, but they specifically asked that can you draw the architecture. After I drew the architecture, they asked me what exactly is this service being used for. They said if you are already using Confluent Kafka, then what's the point of using MSK? So I had to explain that no, Confluent Kafka was earlier we were using Confluent Kafka, but after that, when we tried to port our entire pipeline or entire architecture to AWS, that is when we used MSK. So basically, this was a plug and play thing. In a pipeline, you can actually plug and play components, right? You can use another compute engine instead of Spark, right? Spark is also a plug and play compute engine. Instead of Kafka, you can have Pulsar in place. Instead of Pulsar, you can have Red Panda in place, right? So when it comes to file systems, instead of HDFS, you can have EMRFS, you can have S3FS, right? So that's what I'm saying, right? On the BI front, you can have different type of tool. You can actually use Power BI, or you can simply go for maybe Amazon's own, I think, a quick site is what they have, right? So that you can use that. So this is the in-depth, this is the depth of their questions. Like this is how deep they can go. And apart from that, these guys actually asked me to not just write a query, but they asked me to use CTEs. Right, they simply asked me to use CTEs, and then it was a simple query, but they keep on grilling on the same query. They won't give you a different question. They'll start grilling the same question itself. Then apart from that, this was the SQL one. Then they will give you a simple code, just a simple code to write, but then optimize it. When we talk about optimization, so they will ask you, can you decrease the complexity of this code? I hope the computer science students know about what exactly is the complexity of an open square, of n log n, all these things, right? So you need to have at least go through these things. And when you are writing the code, you need to understand, or you need to always try to optimize your code and decrease the complexity. So these are the things that they ask. And I remember appearing for Visa. So in Visa also, these guys also grill candidates in the interview. So this guy asked me, they had 3 or 4 rounds, I think. First one was simply the screening round. So they will ask you basic questions about what exactly have you worked on. That is their pet question. And apart from that, some small coding questions. The second round would be SQL plus data modeling. So wherein they will ask you, they asked me for if at all we have to sell tickets for maybe a cricket match, right? And there are 6 teams playing. So you need to create a data model accordingly for that. You have 3 stadiums, you have 3 cities, you have 6 teams. You have to create a data model for that, so that you can sell tickets to people. So you have to create a ticket selling for that you have to create a data model, right? And similarly, GoDaddy asked me to create a data model similar to that of Amazon. So basically, Amazon, you go over there, you make a purchase, then you check out, and simply then they deliver it to you, right? So there must be so many tables, right? There must be so many tables wherein they must be putting that, yeah, this is the status of your product, this is the product that this person has purchased. So if I am, let's say, Swapnil, right, I must have purchased maybe hundreds or thousands of products from Amazon, right? So they must be maintaining those records also. So they asked me to create a data model for that. So basically, first you have to go through your core skills. I won't say go through DSA straight away. First, go through your core skills. So basically, because although the first round is DSA, but they don't expect you to solve the entire problem. They just simply want to see your approach, and is your approach going towards resolving the problem. So that is one thing. But you have to go through your core skills, then you go through DSA. because using the core skills you can actually qualify the service firms and captive firms. But now that you have offers from service and captive firms, now that you are confident enough that you can qualify these firms, now then you have to go for, then you will chase product firms, right? Maybe Atlassian, maybe Walmart, maybe Amazon, or maybe Meta, or maybe Nvidia, because these are the guys that hire over here in India, right? So for that you need to have good understanding of DSA, right? Then comes your SQL, right? So SQL, because Word moved towards Spark, but Spark guys again introduced Spark SQL for the ease of data analytics and data analysts and the people who are from ETL background. So they are good in SQL, right? They might not be familiar with the engineering aspect, but they are still, they can optimize their queries and they are good in SQL, right? So for that, you need SQL, DSA, and your core skills. So make sure you go through your core skill first, then you make sure you go through DSA, and along with that, you parallelly prepare SQL for that. So these are the things that you need to take into consideration. And one more pro tip with that is, when you are preparing for your core skill, make sure you prepare a OneNote. That is what I tell everyone. You prepare a OneNote and you keep on mentioning, you basically you have to arrange it in a certain manner. Let's say if you have a data engineering chapter, then you should have pages for Spark, page for Kafka, page for Hive, page for Impala, page for Kudu, page for maybe MapReduce or maybe Hadoop itself, and page for Red Panda, page for Pulsar. So this is how you prepare notes. If you are preparing for AWS, then AWS is your chapter name. Then inside that you should have pages for maybe EC, one page for EC2, one page for auto scaling groups, third for ELB, fourth for ECS, fifth for EKS, sixth for MSK. So this is how you have to maintain it. So that is how you prepare for the interviews, and that is how basically you go for the interview. All prepared, all equipped with the knowledge. But first and foremost is create a proper CV. Create a proper CV with exact keywords, because keywords are what they are looking for. Make sure it is ATS, make sure that ATS can find it out, right? So I think they call it ATS enabled or something, right? If your resume. So make sure you go through that, right? So yeah, over to you.
Right, okay, Swapnil. Yeah, that was an extensive explanation. So just to summarize all of this, it's important that you should be very confident on the technologies and the keywords that you will be putting on your resume. That's very important. And firstly, to track or prepare for companies like service-based companies and captive companies that you've mentioned, pretty much the core concept should be very strong on, and like Spark, for example. And apart from that, you might have to work on your other skills for that 10% of product-based companies who are looking for your problem-solving and analytical skills, right? So for that, you mentioned that DSA is pretty much important, and data modeling and system design part of it. So these are the key things that you will have to focus on for cracking that top-notch product-based companies. So thank you so much for sharing all of this information. And also very important is the notes that you have mentioned. That is a key takeaway as well, that you should have a very well maintained and a structured, notes which would be accessible across multiple platforms as well. Yeah. So yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Swapnil. And if you have any quick tips for all our data enthusiasts, if you would like to share, that would be great.
So basically for that, I would like to say, if you are about to switch your tech stack, you have been, let's say you were part of Infosys, you have been working on maybe .NET or Java, right? And you want to switch your tech stack as well as your company, because you can see the hype of big data in the market right now. And that is basically, money is the main motivating factor, right? So if you want to switch your tech stack and at the same time your company, because you might not be getting big data products in projects in your current company. So make sure you at least grasp some knowledge, or maybe just check a couple of architectures that are present, or maybe the data pipelines or the architectures, big data architectures on Google itself, right? Then you create a scenario out of it. Let's say if you are working with a railway client, or maybe if you are working with an aviation client, Lufthansa. So you must be dealing with some data at least, right? You create a scenario out of it. You create your own POC that if, let's say, if I have this data from Lufthansa, then what can I do with this data? if I take into consideration a pipeline which is involving maybe S3, then if I have some data in S3, then I have Lambda. So Lambda, if the moment a file lands in S3, so Lambda expressions get triggered and they start processing that particular file. So, and then we have Spark or maybe Glue that processes the file, pulls the metadata, and then gives it or maybe pushes it to maybe Redshift, right? Then after Redshift, your Athena or maybe your this thing, Power BI or QuickSight, they start to query that data or maybe they start to visualize that data. So you take into consideration a pipeline and whatever client you are working for right now, right? No matter what tech stack you are working on, just take into basically check their data model or what exactly is that what type of data do they have, and use this pipeline that you have maybe pulled from Google or maybe just from some sort of Google image, and then try to implement or maybe try to simply create a POC out of it. Right, so that is one thing. Basically, you got a picture or you got the architecture, you have the data, then create a POC in your own mind or maybe in your own notes that this is what you are going to tell in the interview, that this is the pipeline that I have built myself, or this is what I have been working on. Right, although I mean this does not sound very much ethical, but anyway, you can actually do that. And apart from that, no matter how much you learn, no matter what amount of knowledge you gain, you are going to forget it. If you are not working on it, you are definitely going to forget it. So the tip for that would be create POCs. If you have a small Windows machine, if you maybe let's say of 8 GB RAM or something, just create some POCs. So one example is I created, from some blog only, I saw that and I created a pipeline that we can run using Alexa. You simply ask Alexa to run your pipeline and it will run your entire pipeline, right? So create POCs like that. Create small projects like that, put it on your GitHub, no matter from where you have picked it, right? You must have picked it from maybe medium.com, right? You must have picked it from some or the other place. You simply create that pipeline, tell them, yeah, these are my projects, this is what I've worked on. I usually work on in my own personal time also. This is what I was working on in the company and this is what I work in my own space, just to grasp some knowledge. This is especially for the people who have maybe 1 year experience or 2 IOE or maybe 2.5 IOE. Right, because they do not have much exposure about the industry itself, so they need some or the other thing to present themselves. So you prepare your own GitHub also, like you should have your personal projects over there, so that you can showcase it to the world, showcase it to the interviewer, right? So this is what you need to do. Create your own projects and small POC. This is how you will learn. Otherwise, you will definitely forget it. If people who are who are enrolled in Sumit sir course, they must be knowing about the small capstone project that we have at the end, right? That we usually do at the end. So combining all the tools or frameworks and then creating a pipeline out of it, data pipeline. So similarly, you can have your own pipeline. Once you are confident enough that yeah, I have worked on these tools and in my personal space also I worked on these many frameworks, then you can definitely go ahead and start giving interviews. So this will be helpful. I have created so many small POCs. I have created n number of POCs and experimented n number of times with why specifically Kafka, because Kafka happens to be my forte. I did from zero to hero in Kafka. So that is why Kafka and streaming data itself. So that is why I'm asking people who are watching maybe this podcast to go through or maybe create a small POCs and pull out architecture diagrams from Google itself and implement your own thing. Maybe pull some data from Kaggle, right? And try to create that pipeline on your machine only. Don't worry about the small costs that AWS services that you can incur or maybe get in your bill from AWS. Don't worry about that. It's worth it. It's completely worth it. $10, $20 means nothing, right? So just go for the small POCs. So that is how you can learn it, because simply reading a book will never, or maybe simply going through a course also is not enough. You need to create your own small projects also. So yeah, that's from my side.
If you've enjoyed the video and found it informative, do show some love and support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more such interesting conversations with expert data engineers. If you have any doubts related to career in big data, do mention them in the comments below. We will try to address them in the upcoming videos. Thank you so much for watching.